This might be the most famous letter on Earth. It's the first letter in any language that uses the Latin, Cyrillic, or Greek script, which means it's the #1 letter for most of the world. We're even conditioned to associate it with a job well done due to the education system. As widespread as this letter is, it's virtually the same in every language. The Cyrillic version is called A and makes the sound or I won't say any more, as I don't want to accidentally anger the actual creators of this letter. There are an insane amount of Cyrillic letters that look like B. Some are common, some are rare. I like to call this one B with a hat in its uppercase form, or curvy B in its lowercase form. It's common in every Cyrillic using language. It's called B, and it sounds just like the B we know and love in English. B. This one looks like the Latin capital B. It's called V, and like Spanish, it makes a V sound. V. Depending on the word position, language, and dialect, the pronunciation can vary slightly, but it's still going to all be centered around the V. This Cyrillic letter is one of the weirdest. It appears in every language that uses Cyrillic, and it's most often called G, making the sound G. But in Ukrainian and Belarusian, it's called H, making the sound H. In some alternate fonts, the letter can also look like this. Depending on the language, dialect, and word structure, it can also sound like K, H, or V. I like to call it the hangman letter, as its main sounds are G and H. But if you want to perfect your pronunciation, you'll have to do a bit of trial and error. Do you recognize this uncommon symbol? It's a letter used occasionally in the Cyrillic script. It only appears in Ukrainian and some smaller minority languages. It can appear rarely in Belarusian as well. In those languages, its name is G, and the sound it makes is G. But wait! I thought this Cyrillic letter was called G and made the sound G. Well, in the majority of Cyrillic using languages, that's true. But the languages that use this letter are going to call this letter H instead, where it'll make the sound H or H. If you're confused, notice that this letter looks like someone flexing their gains. G. This letter may look like a space invader, but its qualities really aren't so alien. It's used in every language that uses the Cyrillic script. It's called D, and it makes the English D sound. D. It's super easy to remember if you think of its resemblance to the Latin capital D or the Greek capital delta. In some alternate fonts, the letter can also look like this. If it comes at the end of a word or after some soft consonants, it sounds more like T. But D and T are very similar sounds, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. This could very well be the most common letter in the world. Let's take a look at it in the context of the Cyrillic script. In most Cyrillic script using languages, it's pretty straightforward and consistent. It's called I and makes the sound I. But in the most widely spoken Cyrillic script language, Russian, as well as Belarusian and Mongolian, it's called Y, and in most cases it'll be pronounced as Y, like in the Russian word Niet. For those other scenarios where it should sound like I, like in the word uzhe, many speakers will sneak in a little I to round off their accent, making it uzhe. There are even some situations where this letter will sound like yo or o, like in yesho. Sometimes there will be a diacritic to indicate this pronunciation, but it's not very common. At the end of the day, the pronunciation of this letter is going to depend on the language, dialect, and life experience of the person speaking it. So don't let its ambiguity stop you from trying to connect with your fellow souls. Do you know what this symbol is? It's not the euro sign, but instead, it's an uncommon letter of the Cyrillic script. It's called the Ukrainian Ye. It only appears in Ukrainian and a small minority language called Rusyn. It makes the sound Ye, and I'll tell you why it only exists in these languages. In Ukrainian and many other Cyrillic using languages, this letter makes the sound E, and in order to achieve the Ye sound, it has to be combined with another letter. In Russian and Belarusian, it can even make the sound Ye on its own, depending on its position in a word. Ukraine decided that that was a bit too confusing, so it kept this letter exclusively as the sound E, while introducing its own Ukrainian Ye to represent the sound Ye. Being the world's biggest trolls, the Russian language also has this letter, backwards Ye. To help remember the Ukrainian Ye, I focus on how it appears to be facing east, ready to protect the Ukrainian culture to which it belongs. Yeah. This letter has made me start believing that vowels are a scam. It appears in many Latin script using languages, but this video will analyze the Cyrillic version. In Cyrillic, it appears in Russian, Belarusian, Mongolian, and some smaller minority languages. In almost all of these languages, its name is yo, and it makes the sound yo, ya, or which, if you talk fast enough, basically all sound the same. Wait, at full conversation speed, all vowels kind of sound the same. At least Russia seems to think so, because there are many Russian words where the two dots on top of the letter yo just aren't written. Take a look at this word. How do you think it's pronounced? Yesha? Nope. Try yesho. Or how about this one? It's written as svoye, but it's actually pronounced svoyo. In Russian, this happens with other vowels too. Check out this word. You think it would sound like eto, but it's pronounced as eta. What is going on in Russia? When I was younger, some of my friends' parents told them not to hang out with me because my preferred greeting was yo. Maybe that's what's going on in the Russian language. Yo. What might this symbol be? Is it an asterisk? No, you f***ing shithead. This special snowflake is a letter in the Cyrillic alphabet, and its name is zhe. It appears in every language that uses the Cyrillic alphabet, and the sound it makes is similar to its name. That sound is zh. See how it kind of looks like someone sprawled out on an inner tube at a water park, getting some leisure time? Or maybe like someone laying on a beach somewhere, right under some buried treasure. Wait, what's that? Maybe pleasure is a better word to help remember its pronunciation? If you don't want to use any words to remember it, luckily its Latin equivalent is hidden right in the letter itself. Zh.
While some TikTok users like to say, "It's just a number, bro," that sentence doesn't apply to this symbol. In the language of the universe, it is a number, 3, but in the Cyrillic script, it's also a letter. It's found in every Cyrillic script using language. It's called ze, and it takes the sound of the English letter z. Z. To remember the pronunciation when I see it in a word, I always think of a middle-aged Slavic man driving a BMW Z3. Z.
Does this letter look familiar? Maybe a little too familiar. In English, it's called I. And as an English speaker, I literally am I. And I was surprised to find out that this letter is also used in the Cyrillic script. In Cyrillic, it's called the dotted E. It appears in Ukrainian, Belarusian, Kazakh, and some other smaller minority languages that use Cyrillic. In most cases, the sound it makes is E. In Cyrillic using languages that don't have the dotted E, this letter makes the sound E instead. But if the language has the dotted E, this letter is going to make the sound I. The pronunciations are reversed in Kazakh and some smaller languages, however, so be careful. The letters of the Cyrillic script may seem like completely foreign symbols, but letters like the dotted E make me think that maybe we aren't so different after all. E.
What is this I with 2 dots?
It appears as a letter in some Latin script using languages to designate pronunciation in a verb pair, such as in the word naive. But it would be naive to think that this letter is only found in the Latin script. This letter also appears in the Cyrillic script, specifically in Ukrainian and some smaller minority languages. In these languages, it's called yi, and just like its name, the sound it makes is yi. Everyone loves getting 2 for the price of 1. Having double of what you expected is often a cause for celebration. And like most refined citizens of the modern world, I celebrate by saying, yay! Imagine having 2 of her. But wait, in Ukrainian, the word for her is yi. Yi. Looks can be deceiving in the Cyrillic alphabet. You might think that this backwards N makes a consonant sound, but really, it's a vowel. It's called E, and it sounds like E or I. It's used in every Cyrillic using language except Belarusian. In some alternate fonts, the letter can also look like this. Here's what goes on in my head when I see it in a word. It can also be a word itself, usually meaning and. Focusing on the middle part will help you remember how it's pronounced, but remember, it's only E or I, never I. This might be the most infamous Cyrillic character. Although it looks like 2 letters, it is just one singular letter, and in most cases, it sounds like half a letter. It's found in Russian, Belarusian, Mongolian, and the Turkic languages that use Cyrillic. Its name is Yeri or Yeru, and its pronunciation is based around the sound U. In Russian, Belarusian, and Mongolian, this letter only makes the first half of that sound. But in a Turkic language, like Uzbek, Kazakh, or Turkmen, this letter signifies a more pronounced, slightly longer version of that sound. Ooh. As this letter looks like it's halfway to being the English word Bill, I created a character named Shy Bill to help with its most common pronunciation. Just take someone who has the name Bill, make them shy, and put them in a social situation. Oh look! Here's the waiter. And he gave the bill to Bill. But Shy Bill was overcharged. Will he speak up?
Looks like I was charged twice. I'll just pay it.
This is one of my favorite Cyrillic letters. To me, it looks like a backwards N with a crown, but it's really a Cyrillic E with a crown. When it's wearing its crown, its name becomes short E. I guess it's trying to look taller by wearing its crown floating on its head. It appears in every Cyrillic script using language except Serbian, Macedonian, Montenegrin, and Bosnian, who use a different letter for the sound that this letter makes. That sound is E. To understand the difference between short E and regular E, let's take a look at the Russian word for Russian, Ruski. Notice the difference in pronunciation between the two similar letters, Ruski. Although both letters are called E, the one with the crown gets to make the sound E. Most of the world knows this symbol. On its own, it's a brief but rude way to respond to a text. Two of them, and you have a guitar-playing dog. Three together? Well, that's a group of sad boomers who never got enough love. Or a Brazilian internet laugh. But the beauty of this symbol is that no matter what language or script it's found in, it makes the same sound. K. In English, it's known as K, and in Cyrillic, it's called Ka. It's used in virtually every Latin and Cyrillic script using language, which means the majority of the world uses it every day. But no matter what you call it, it sounds like K. This lovely Cyrillic letter looks like someone lunging. It's enlisted by every Cyrillic using language, where it also can look like this. It's called L, and it sounds like L, or L, which to me are literally exactly alike. Let's look at how I like to remember it. Just isolate the long, lanky left leg. It almost looks like a flipped Latin capital L, and you'll learn the pronunciation of this Cyrillic letter naturally. L. When you see this letter, what language do you think of? Because of words like me, more, and mine, I tend to think of the consumerist West and the languages that are spoken there. I was shocked to find out that this letter also appears in Cyrillic script languages, and it makes the same sound as it does in the West. In the Cyrillic context, the letter's called am. It's used in every language that has the Cyrillic script, and the sound it makes is m. Be sure to note that the lowercase form of this letter is just a smaller version of the uppercase form, as this has a completely different meaning in some Cyrillic script languages. With this info in mind, get out there and make some ams today. If you want to learn this Cyrillic letter, you'll have to reprogram your brain again. This symbol can mean a few different things for us in the West, but our friends in the Far East all know it as N. It's used in every Cyrillic script using language, and it makes the sound N. As an English speaker, I just visualize turning the middle piece a bit to make it look like the N that I know. Every human in the world knows this symbol. If I was a caveman and I found a stick in the woods, I'd probably draw something like this. Circles are within us. They say so much without ever speaking a word. Not only do they represent things like unity, perfection, and infinity, but they also appear naturally in the world around us. Since humans like to borrow ideas from nature for their own creations, it only makes sense that the circle exists as a letter in most languages of the world. In this part of the world, where the languages use the Cyrillic script, it's commonly called O. It makes the sound O, or and it's found in every language that uses the Cyrillic script. Isn't it a great thing to see how cultures overlap?
Many Cyrillic letters are derived from Greek. This one comes from arguably the most famous Greek letter of them all, pi. It's called pe. It appears in every Cyrillic using language, and it sounds like p. You could remember it by focusing on its similarity to pi, but be careful, as there's another Cyrillic letter that looks like pi as well. I remember how to pronounce it by noticing its resemblance to a perfect, peaceful staple.
I remember when I first saw the Russian word for Russia, Potsner. If you speak a Latin script language, this symbol only means one thing. P. In Cyrillic, the letter's called R, and it makes the R sound. R. If you're trying to learn a Cyrillic script language, you're going to see it a lot because it's in all of them. You can always override your brain's programming with some trusty mental spray paint. Focusing on the upper left-hand corner of the letter will help you remember how it's pronounced. R. If you're an English speaker, then you likely know this symbol as the letter C, and you know that it can make quite a few different sounds depending on the other letters that surround it. But what does this symbol mean to a Russian, a Bulgarian, a Ukrainian, or one of the many other people who use the Cyrillic script? To them, it's a letter as well, and it appears in every language that uses the Cyrillic script. In these languages, it's commonly called S, and it consistently makes the same sound. S. I was always confused seeing the Cyrillic acronym for the USSR. CSCP. I later found out that it stood for Soyuz Sovietske Sotsialistическая Republik. What a mouthful. No wonder the Soviet Union was a mistake. Well, at least it helps me remember how to pronounce this letter. S. Here's another symbol that's shared by the whole world. It appears in some shape or form in almost every script on Earth. It's a staple in Latin, the most widely used script on the globe. It shows up all over the Chinese characters. And in India's two most common scripts, it seems to be in almost every letter. But in this video, we're going to take a look at its role in the Cyrillic script. This symbol appears on its own as a letter in every language that uses Cyrillic. It's commonly called te, and just like in Latin, it makes the sound t. In Cyrillic, for some reason, it can also look like this in alternate fonts. It's amazing to see how much we all have in common. People from different cultures sometimes don't get along because of history, poor leadership, or personal experiences. But underneath our different cultures, we're all members of the same culture, the same race. Human. So it should not be taboo to make jokes or critiques about your fellow brothers and sisters. Acknowledging our differences is what makes life worth living, but make sure to do it out of love. Studying a foreign language means time and effort put towards understanding and connecting with people completely different from you. It's a monumental exercise in empathy. If the whole world spoke the same language, we'd be one giant step closer to fixing the mess of the modern world. So keep studying and remember this letter. It looks like someone coming in for a hug, so use it to hug your fellow humans with words. And that's the t. This is quite an interesting letter in the Latin script. Here's a list of some of the sounds it makes, and that's not even all of them. But in the Cyrillic script, this letter's much more consistent. It only makes one sound. In Cyrillic, the letter's called U. It's a crucial part of every Cyrillic script language. And guess what? Just like its name, the sound it makes is U. When I see it in a sentence, I completely ignore the bottom half like the gentleman I am, and I keep my eyes up here. The shape of the top part helps me remember the pronunciation. U. Did you know that this is a Cyrillic letter? Although some might say, it was stolen from Greek, it's grown to global status. We can use this symbol as an example of our shared humanity. Besides, the Greek version looks a bit different anyways. As a global symbol, it appears as a letter in every Cyrillic script using language. In Cyrillic, it's called F or F, and the sound it makes is F. To help remember, I always think of phosphorus on the periodic table, or phosphor, as the sound appears twice, and the symbols look similar. After all, the periodic table was invented by a Russian guy. I guess that's a win for the Cyrillic script. Wait. Oh, what the f? This has to be the symbol with the highest amount of different meanings. From a kiss, to a railroad crossing sign, to just plain no, this symbol has countless different uses. It's only fitting that when used as a letter, it can signify many different sounds depending on the language that it appears in. When it appears in a Cyrillic script using language, it's typically called ch. It's used in every language that has Cyrillic, and the sound it makes is ch. I learned foreign languages by playing video games with native speakers. I found out from my investigations that in most Cyrillic languages, this letter is used to designate laughter. So it's not too hard to remember once you've seen it a few times. But don't be fooled. It's not ha ha ha. Instead, it's a more Slavic laugh. Ha ha ha. This little U with the tail makes the ts sound. It's pretty easy to remember if you think of the classic Russian word tsar. If that doesn't work, it does look an awful lot like Caesar Milan reaching down to nip the ear of a misbehaving dog. This upside down backwards lowercase h is a very common letter in the Cyrillic script. Its name is ch. It appears in every Cyrillic script using language, and it makes the same sound in all of them. Ch. While some Cyrillic characters look like Latin letters flipped sideways, ch is flipped both sideways and upside down. I remember how it's pronounced by imagining the noise a condescending snob would make after noticing that it's upside down. This letter doesn't even know which way is up. Ch. How embarrassing.
It's hard to be a human and not know about the multilingual onomatopoeia sh used to stop someone from speaking.
GameLang, your videos are just ripped off from Wiki.
In the Cyrillic script, that sound can be made with just one letter. It's called sha. It's used in every Cyrillic script language, and as you can guess, it sounds like sh. Other interjections like oh, huh, and wow are generally used in a short and blunt manner, but sh can be extended indefinitely. Shh. Conveniently enough, sha appears to be the Cyrillic letter with the longest horizontal distance. Focusing on the length of the letter helps me remember how it's pronounced.
Shh. Have you ever seen this symbol before? It would make sense if you haven't, because it's pretty uncommon. It's a letter in the Cyrillic script. It only appears in Bulgarian, Ukrainian, Russian, Kazakh, and Mongolian, along with a few other smaller languages. It's called shcha, and like its name, it makes the sound sh. You might think that this is two sounds in one, but in practical conversation, it can be pronounced much faster, blending the sounds together. Something like sh. And Bulgarians pronounce it more like sht. You see how it kind of looks like a newly opened bar of fresh chocolate? Just focus on the end of fresh and the beginning of chocolate in that phrase, sh, and you'll have this letter on your tongue like a piece of candy. So this one looks like sex, or a key. It's used in pretty much every language that uses the Cyrillic script, and I like to call it the Soldier Boy letter because its name is, and it's pronounced as...
This backwards capital R is a vowel in the Cyrillic script. It's present in the majority of Cyrillic using languages. It's called ya, and as its name suggests, in most cases, it sounds like ya.
However, when it comes after a soft consonant, which is a consonant pronounced with the tongue close to or touching the roof of the mouth,
The y is dropped, and it's pronounced as a. In these cases, depending on language, dialect, and word structure, it can also sound like or I. But for most situations, you can focus on its similarity to a jumping Mario to remember its most common pronunciation.
Have you seen this symbol before? Think about it, but don't think too hard.
Spending too much time thinking about previous mistakes is useless, and it can turn you into a simp fast. Interestingly enough, in the Cyrillic script, there's a letter that can alter the past. It's called the soft sign, or the small yur. It's used in every Cyrillic script language outside of Tajik and Uzbek. It doesn't make a sound on its own, but instead it softens the consonant that comes before it through a process called palatalization. This just means that you pronounce the consonant with your tongue lightly touching the palate or roof of your mouth.
Let's take a look at the Russian word for end.
Kon. When you add the soft sign to the end of it, it becomes konь. The word for horse. Just remember, we've all done things we wish we could take back, but you can't change what's been written, and only a soft little bee would try.
This Cyrillic letter is called the hard sign, or the big yur. It looks just like the soft sign, but it's wearing a backwards hat so everyone knows that it's hard. So hard that in most languages, it doesn't even make a sound. Instead, here's what happens.
The hard sign is typically only going to come before these four vowels. Vowels in Slavic languages are notoriously confusing. For example, this one can sound like a or ya. This one can sound like e or ye. This one can sound like o or yo. And this one can sound like u or you. The pronunciations depend on the various different letters that surround the vowel. However, when the hard sign comes before these vowels, they're forced to respect its hardness and use the pronunciation beginning with y. For example, let's look at the word siest, meaning to eat up. If the hard sign is removed, it becomes sist, which means to sit. Here's another example with a familiar word, object, which of course is a translation of the English word object. Listen to the pronunciation of the similar word object, which is a promise.
Only about half the Cyrillic using languages use this letter, with the rest electing to use an apostrophe instead. Bulgarian seems to be the only language where this letter does make a sound. In Bulgarian, it sounds like but for the rest of the Cyrillic languages, it's just a glorified apostrophe.